We're going to pick up here probably a little bit of review for you. Last week, if you were in on Wednesday and Thursday, we discussed how power is separated through Montesquieu's ideas in the Spirit of Laws. The idea of the three branches, legislative, executive, and judicial. We have the various things that they're all responsible for here, so if you need to pause this, you can do it at any time and take down the information that you see. Obviously, here in the legislative branch, they go to work in the Capitol building. The executive, of course, is here in the White House, and then the judicial branch headed up by the highest court in the land, the Supreme Court. Understanding the numbers here, the House of Reps is 435 members, the Senate 100 members, so you have well over 500 members of this body. The executive branch is made up of the president, the vice president, and then his cabinet. We're going to talk about that later, his formal group of advisors. The courts are obviously headed up by the Supreme Court. Then you have lower courts, or what they call appellate courts, and then down to the U.S. District Court level. We'll talk about that later as well. The Electoral College, of course, we just went through this in our history, but understand that that was that compromise between Congress electing the president and the people electing the president. So what we have today, and you just went through it, is that Congress creates that system by where candidates for president must go out and win states. And in winning states, they win their electoral votes to win the presidency. Talking about that, you have to understand how each state's electoral number is determined, and it's pretty easy. You take the number of House of Representative seats that each state has individually. So here, let's use us. We're Pennsylvania. We have 18 seats in the U.S. House of Representatives. You then add 2 for the senators. And so what happens is that this is satisfying those people who wanted to have Congress elect the president. Here you can sort of see the congressional influence. But the people's influence is that each state, whoever wins the popular vote in that state, gets their electoral votes. That's the way we work on 48 of the 50 states. We have a winner-take-all approach. How do you get the smallest number of electoral count that a state can get? Well, if you look at House, everybody's guaranteed 1 House of Representatives. Each state is guaranteed 2 senators. So the smallest state number in the Electoral College would be 3. Okay? So for the rest of this screencast, what I'm going to do is go over that work that I had assigned that was the 7-3 checks and balances, because it leads right into this idea of how is power limited, remember, or balanced. That was Montesquieu's second point. Separate it and then balance it. So what we have is this system. It's called checks and balances. And checks are sort of powers or responsibilities each branch has over the other branches, and thereby creating balance. So if you want to pause it here, it is the system by which each branch has those powers over other branches to keep all 3 branches equally in check. I'm going to ask you to find this worksheet that was the assignment, where it was different parts of checks and balances review. And so this first one starts off pretty simple. So I'm going to go through these somewhat fast, but hopefully you can follow along and make the necessary changes to your sheet. So the branch that's made up of Congress, that would be obviously the legislature. What branch is made up of the president? That would be the executive. The branch made up of the Supreme Court, that would be the judicial. Which branch can propose laws? It is the executive. Remember, the executive branch cannot make laws. That's why they need the legislative branch. Which branch interprets? Remember, that was on one I already gave you, so that would be the judicial. Which branch has the power to declare war? Actually, it is the legislative branch. I know that a lot of people tend to think of the president. He is, or she will, be the leader of the commander-in-chief of all armed forces. But they must have a declaration of war from Congress. If not, they need Congress to approve any type of extended military conflict. Which branch has the power to negotiate foreign treaties? That would be the executive branch. The power to confirm presidential appointments. We just went through that. That's the legislative branch. With the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, we've had a new person put on the court. Which branch has the power to command armed forces? Just went through that. Which branch has the power to ratify the treaties? Well, obviously, it's not going to be the executive, it would be the legislative. And then which branch has the power to review lower federal court decisions? Well, if it deals with the court, that is judicial. The second thing, and this is where we'll end today, and I know some struggle with this, is basically figuring out what branch is doing the checking and what branch is being checked. So when you look at this, it says veto bills. So who has the power to veto bills? Well, that would be the executive branch. But the branch that's actually being checked is Congress, or the legislative branch. So let's do this next one. Power to impeach and remove the president. Well, obviously, that would be the branch being checked. Who has that power? It is the legislative branch. Who has the power to declare laws unconstitutional? That would be the courts. So it would be the judicial branch, and the one that's being checked is Congress, the one that make the laws. Who has the power to approve or reject presidential treaties? Well, here is the second answer, so that would be executive, and the one that's over here would be legislative. Now, number 5 says override a veto. So basically, it is the exact opposite of this. So the president has the power to veto, to reject bills. The way to basically counteract that is if it's switched around and how Congress can then override a president's veto. So the answers would be legislative, and the person they're checking would be the executive to override. That's a difficult thing because you need 2/3 vote in each member or part of Congress, both the House and the Senate. Approving and rejecting treaties, that is the legislative, and they're checking the executive power. Presidential power to appoint judges, well, they sort of give it away there. That would be the president being able to check the power of the courts. So that is an important power that is granted to the president. Ability to propose constitutional amendments, that would be the legislative, Congress, and they can, of course, get around various judicial rulings. If the Supreme Court keeps ruling a certain way, the only way to do that is to change the Constitution itself. Power to impeach the Supreme Court justices, well, obviously this would be the second half. Supreme Court would be over here in judicial, and the branch that has that power would be the Congress, the legislative. And last but not least, declare executive actions unconstitutional. Right there, that gives you part of the answer. Executive would be over here. Who has that power? That would be the opposite of this, and that would be the judicial branch checking the power of the president. Now, the last part of this assignment had you comparing various different types of powers: national or federal power, state power, and then concurrent, or what we would refer to as shared powers. So that whole idea is something that we refer to as federalism. So this is the last thing for today. Federalism is that idea of a division of powers between the federal and state governments. Some powers are federal powers, some are state, and then some are shared. Some of the easy ones that we usually talk about is a concurrent power. A power that is shared is a power like taxing. So when you get your first job, you will be taxed by the federal government, you will be taxed by the state government, and even your local government. So that is referred to as a concurrent power. They are basically shared. They all have that power. So here is another one that's sort of an idea of shared power. And I always give the idea of building roads. So here we have Interstate 81. That's the one that we drive right over Mountain Road to get here to Linglestown if you're coming from the other side. This is a federal road. Okay, red, white, and blue. That means it's a federal road. It's an interstate. It goes between the states. So the money comes from the federal government. Okay. The opposite of that would be a state road. So here we have 39, or Linglestown Road. And you can sort of see the image of the keystone. So you know you're on a state road. So that is just a simple explanation. We'll get into more of it tomorrow. But a last thing, hopefully understanding this, any roads that end in an odd number run north and south, and any roads that end in an even number run east and west. So for instance, Allentown Boulevard, the one that runs by Target and Colonial Park Mall, that's also known as Route 22, which runs east and west. So we're going to end it here, and we'll pick up more with 7-3 later.